also how we can kind of shorten lists that you use in the program. So I'm thinking of things like health conditions and treatments and the bull list. Emma and I both kind of think this is not the most exciting subject, but we're going to do our best to explain why it is important. Because if you get the general settings right, it can speed up your data entry, but also it allows us to record information that we can then analyze. If you don't need that information, then it's important that you turn those options off, because that will slow you down on data entry. And we also just want you to be aware that these options are available. So as always, there will be what's the word I'm looking for? An email with a movie link on it that will come out at the end, which you can forward to other people maybe on the farm that may be potentially interested. A really short survey. We appreciate it a lot that you take the time to fill that in. It's only 3 questions, but again, it just gives us a guide if we're going in the right direction. So, general settings. Why is it important? Where do we find it? Over to you, Em.
So, if we go to the cow's head and daily tasks, daily events, you've got a settings button here. You click on that one, it will just take a few seconds to load, and then you are brought back with these tabs at the top on your cow calendar. So you've got heat, serving, pregnancy, dry off, and calving. And changing the settings in here will impact what changes on and shows up on your dashboard. So we're in the heat tab. How many days after calving for in heat? This is where you would set the amount of days after calving, and this will impact how many animals are appearing on your dashboard to be marked as in heat. So here it says 39. If you want to change it, you can just press the up and down arrows, or you can just type in there the number of days. Then you've got the age and days to start estrus detection for heifers. And again, you would then type in the age and days in that field there.
Sorry, I was going to butt in. I can't help myself. I just really like the next one. The next one's really important. So voluntary waiting period, that's really important when we start looking at the preg rates and a lot of the graphs as well. So you must put in the correct number of days when you actually plan to start serving. So if you're serving in 45 days, put in 45 days. Emma is now laughing at me, so I'm going to pass it back to Emma. I'm sorry.
Oh gosh. Then you've got the comment, the comment section here, which we do recommend having ticked. It's recording comments for reproduction data. So when you mark an animal as in heat, you'll have that comment section appear if there's a tick in this box. And then you've got your heat insemination, where you've got register estrus signs.
So yeah, I think definitely tick the comment box, because then if you put in a pregnancy, you can put a comment in. If you put in a heat, you can put a comment, just dirty, whatever. If you put a service in, you can put in a comment. You don't have to, but I think from the data entry point, you can skip past it so quickly. Always tick that. Register estrus signs, that's really only if you're doing any form of a managed heat, and you actually want to compare the difference between a natural heat and a managed heat. So if you're not doing that and all the heats are natural, then take the tick out, because that's probably not important. But any form of managed heat, I think it's increasingly important to do that, because we can then drill down much deeper on the fertility analysis side. So if you want to give it a go, you can always turn it off afterwards, but just pop a tick in there.
Then we have the serving tab. So clicking on that, this gives you the settings you can put in for your default service method. So if you want for your dairy cows, the default service to automatically appear as DIY AI, you would click on the drop down and select that as your default service method. And that will appear every time you put a service in, but you can change it while you're in the daily events and putting that service in to say a natural service, if that is the case on that specific episode. It just makes data entry a lot faster if you're putting in a default to appear, and you've got a different default that you can set if you want to for your young stock. Then you've got your AI technician code. So if you want to record who the technicians are when you're AI in, is tick that box there, and you can put a default technician in there. So that's clicking on the square and selecting the inseminator code, who would be the default service method. And then code for DIY AI, you can also set a default in there. And to add a new inseminator code in here, if you press on the plus sign, you can then add in more inseminators. So we're just going to type in the name and the herd and the name in the herd number field, and then tick the relevant boxes that is applicable to this new inseminator, and then you can select them in that field there. Again, just because this is the default doesn't mean that you're unable to deviate away from them. If it changes for that service, then this will come up as the default, but you can change it if you want to. And then we've got the semen stock section, and this was covered when we did the semen inventory and the bull records on a previous webinar a few weeks ago. And that's if you've got semen stock and you're using your semen inventory in your program where you're putting purchased semen batches on, and you want to use that stock against services, just make sure there's a tick in that box. And then when you go to put your inseminations on, it'll ask you to select what batch of semen, if you are using semen stock. And then you've got register the batch number at insemination. So that's registering the batch of semen that you're using.
Okay, then let's go over then to pregnancy.
So if we go into the pregnancy tab, you've got the option here, automatically consider cows when pregnant. We don't recommend using this. It's better just to leave this unticked and for you to put your PDs on manually in the program. I'd
go stronger than that. You should never, it should just never be ticked. Just use the batch entry for PDs. That's really, really important. Okay, Em's just multitasking at the moment. I couldn't do this because we've got one person in the car here. I can't hear anything. It's probably because they got their volume turned down. But okay, let's continue.
Okay, so then we've got the pregnancy check section. So ask for days in calf when PD positive. That's useful for if you're running with a bull and you're marking them as PD. You can then put, if you know how many days pregnant they are, what their insemination date was.
So yeah, exactly. So if you put in that she's 60 days pregnant, it will then, the program will calculate an estimated service date, and you know it's an estimated service date because it says EST in the reproduction record. So it's a much quicker way of doing it rather than you having to manually count back what the date would be 60 days ago. So if you are running a bull, then I think that's an important option. And then finally, yeah, PDs. If, for example, you've been doing a manual PD and you're going to go to scanning, you need to change the setting there. So if you wanted to change it to, let's say, 30 days, then any cow basically that's been inseminated more than 30 days will then appear on the list on your dashboard, on your husband's action list, and obviously on the app as well. So that's quite an important setting that you can change.
And that's that bottom one. How many days after insemination for pregnancy diagnosis? Then we've got the dry off tab. How many days before expected calving for dry off to be actioned? If you want them to appear on your dashboard earlier, you can change this setting here. So the amount of days, you would just type it in here if you wanted to change that. And you've also got for first calvers at the bottom here. And again, you can just press the up and down arrows if you wish to change the amount of days. In the dry off treatment section. This is recording treatment when drying off. It's important that's ticked, and you can set a default treatment at dry off based on the lactation results. So in here, this is treatments that will automatically appear based on their milk results. So if we set, say, the first one to sealant only, we add in a new treatment as sealant only if they've had no mastitis. The category would be dry off. So I want the default treatment on this one, for example, no mastitis, no high cell count, to be a sealant only treatment on dry off. And then you can set the default treatments for if they've had at least one case of mastitis or one case of high cell count. You can set those default treatments different. That means that that will automatically be populated for you when you go to dry them off. And then you would just continue with the treatments and the medicines, but you can change it if you want to. So if you want to change the sealant only to a dry cow therapy, then you can do. It's not that it's that's it. That is changeable.
Yeah, I think what's good about this is it's not just telling you the date the cow's due to be dried off. It's giving you a guide based on the facts, as you said. If she's got a high cell count or she's had mastitis, then it recommends a type of treatment. So it's there as a guide again on your dry off list on the dashboard.
So if we go into the calving tab, you've got your gestation period in days here at the top, and that can be edited if you wish. The calving section, this is your record calving ease. So ensure that's ticked because you'd want to report on if you've had difficult calving or whatever. Then you've got condition at calving and weight at calving. This is for the dam. And then on the right hand side here, you can set the default hair color. And if you want to record birth weights, ensure there's a tick in that box there. And then you can set what your automatic default weight will be when the calves are being entered on the program. And this is set to 40, but again, you can change this when you've got a calf that you're putting it in. Otherwise, if you are recording weights, then the 40 kilo will come up automatically. And then,
yeah, I was just going to say, I think that's becoming more important. More and more people now are recording the weights. Yeah. So it's an important thing really to put in the initial weights.
Yeah, and then you've got days after calving, milk should be separated. So all of this you can manage yourself, and then when you're happy with your changes, press OK, and those settings will be applied to your system.
So who said general settings isn't exciting?
I don't.
Okay, one other thing we want to show you, but it is important, you need to know where it is. Sometimes you have like a massive health condition list or a massive treatment list, and maybe these haven't been used for a long period of time. It means you start going up and down the list, which is kind of frustrating. So we just want to show you quickly how you can basically set the codes that you're not using as not in use. It doesn't delete them, and actually we could just show quickly the balls as well, couldn't we?
Yeah. So if you go to the cow's head and daily tasks, you've got all your health conditions here and all your treatments in number 7. If we go into the health condition list, you can see here there's a lot of health conditions on this program, and it may be, for example, you've got all these mastitises here, but you're not always using some of them, and you have ones that you use on a regular basis and some that aren't relevant. So if you want to cut your list down on the health conditions, so it makes it easier for you to navigate to the ones that you do use, just press archive items at the bottom, and the message will just appear saying that if you haven't used some of the items for at least 1 year, then they'll be set to not in use. you press yes to that one, you'll see now the ones that haven't been used have been ticked as not in use. It doesn't mean that you can't ever use them again. Just double clicking on the ones that you want to reactivate, you can then untick the not in use box and say okay, and then that one you've unticked will also appear next time you go into your health condition list. And that's the same with your treatment list as well. And then for your balls, if you go into the cow's head and service balls, you've got your ball listing here. And then all of these balls that are on your program, if you find when you're putting inseminations on, you've got loads of balls and some of them are quite old, you're not using them anymore. Again, you've got an archive unused balls button at the bottom, and pressing that, the ball records will all be marked as not in use. And if you wanted to reactivate that ball, you can, and that would just be by double clicking on the ball record and then editing, going to the other tag and then unticking that not in use option, and then that ball will become available to use again. So it's not a permanent change, it's just narrowing down your options to make it a bit easier.
Yeah, the last thing we would ever want anybody doing is deleting data. We don't want that. We never lose the analysis side. They still remain in the system. They just don't appear on the drop-down list, so it makes it quicker for you to do the data entry. Okay, that's a sort of 15-minute webinar really on general settings, how you can speed up your data entry, customize it to make sure that your action lists are correct in terms of either drying off or PDs. Hopefully you found it helpful. If you could take the time just to fill out the survey, we really do appreciate that. And yeah, we've tried to do October as a month for data entry, and then November we'll be moving on to new subjects. So we hope to see you same time, same place next week. So thank you very much for your time.